Right now, the power is back on for everyone in Madison after many went without it on the hottest day of the year. And those 90-degree temperatures won't let up. Chris is tracking yet another alert day forecast.
Everybody saw the large plumes of smoke from the fires.
A state of emergency, an explosion, and a pair of fires. What's next for Madison after a very chaotic start to the weekend? Plus, the farmers market is back on the square, and there's even more food, clothes, and activity deals happening around town. What to know before you head downtown this weekend.
From the Channel3000.com Alert Center, this is News 3 Now this morning.
Good morning, and thanks for starting your day with us here on News 3 Now. It's Saturday, July 20th. I'm Keely Arthur, and with meteorologist Chris Reese. We're both back from a few weekends off.
Yeah, that's right. I spent the past week in Kentucky directing a weather camp, but I gotta say, coming back yesterday, it seemed like the world was ending.
There was a lot of news happening Friday. You brought it back with you.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'll tell you what, we have another day of heat. Yesterday was busy in the weather department as well with severe storms in northern Wisconsin, and that could be over us as we go through today. We're starting out the day on a very warm note. Already 80 degrees in Madison. 81 as you work your way over towards Lone Rock and Mineral Point. Boscobel at 82. La Crosse is at 85 warm degrees. The dew points don't help at all. Winds out of the south. The dew points are well into the 70s. We have a dew point of 74 in Madison. Dubuque, a dew point of 77. La Crosse, a dew point just shy of 80. This is downright tropical air. And in fact, we're at the level of dew points where I can pretty much say, don't talk to me at this point when you step outside. And this is actually what fueled a lot of that lightning last night. The sky completely lit up, a lot of pictures and video coming in. Those higher dew points oftentimes do mean a lot more lightning out there as well. We saw that as this line of showers and thunderstorms raced through northern Wisconsin with winds up to 100 miles per hour at times. And as I mentioned, that severe weather risk does slide towards southern Wisconsin today. So we're going to be tracking that later on. No storms over us at the moment, but they are starting to develop throughout parts of South Dakota. We'll be tracking that as we go through yet another busy weather day.
Yeah, coming in here this morning, it's so humid.
It is very warm and humid. This is like growing up in South Texas all over again.
You feel like you're back at home.
It does feel like home.
Right. Thanks so much,
My
Chris.
pleasure.
Well, just into the Channel 3000 Alert Center overnight, some good news. Power has now been restored for all Madison area MG&E customers after a fire caused widespread, long-lasting outages downtown. So what caused it all? MG&E says it was a mechanical problem that sparked a pair of fires at two of their substations. The first fire started around 7:30 Friday morning. The second just down the road, starting shortly after, cutting out power lines to thousands of people. Now, crews had both fires under control before noon, and thankfully no one was injured. The two substations are electrically connected, so ATC says it's likely that the fires were related.
Everybody saw the large plumes of smoke from the fires. Our air quality index is still in the green, but it's at the top end of the green, approaching yellow. But we think that elevated level is most likely about the weather, because the smoke from the fires was very limited in duration and probably hasn't impacted air quality.
Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers declared a state of emergency overnight for the city and the county, and also sent all non-essential state workers home early. But many people who live in the downtown area and were left without power had to make alternate plans for their own safety.
We were unable to leave with our vehicle because we have a power garage door opener in our apartment complex, so we couldn't get our car out. We had to rely on others who had transportation.
She, like many, woke up because of the bright lights coming from the fire, but left her apartment after she lost power. Once she was able to get out, she got away from the area and planned to stay elsewhere. The ripple effects of these fires were felt at the Dane County Airport as well. They tweeted that the facility's Wi-Fi, internet, and flight arrival and departure information systems are malfunctioning. The airport recommends anyone flying in or out of Dane County, even into the weekend, should check with their airline on their flight status. As we continue to learn more about how this fire and explosion started and the city's plan moving forward, be sure to stay with News 3 Now. We will have more coverage throughout the weekend. More local news now. In unrelated news, a plane successfully landed with no landing gear at Dane County Regional Airport overnight. It landed on the secondary runway, so operations on the main runway were not impacted. Officials with the airport said the plane was a Beechcraft Bonanza with 2 people on board. There were no injuries or fire as a result of that landing. And we now know the identity of the motorcyclist killed in a fatal crash early Friday morning on John Nolan Drive. He has been identified as 47-year-old Craig Schley of Brooklyn, Wisconsin. The Dane County Medical Examiner says additional testing is underway right now. And farmers market vendors will be back on the square this morning after Art Fair on the Square displaced the event last Saturday. This week marks the start of the second half of the outdoor season, and vendors are hoping this go around will provide more stability. After a cold and wet start, they're hoping for more crowds heading into the fall. September is routinely the busiest time of year at the outdoor market as football games draw big crowds. Today's market runs the usual 6:15 a.m. until 1:45 p.m. and this year's outdoor market season runs through November 16th. And calling all bargain shoppers, an annual tradition more than 40 years strong, continues in downtown Madison today. Maxwell Street Days draws an average of 30,000 people each year to State Street for a weekend full of music, good food, and great bargains, all displayed on outdoor stands. This year, more than 50 shops, restaurants, and museums are participating. The event is modeled after Chicago's famous Maxwell Street Outdoor Market, which ran for more than 100 years until 1994. If you're hunting for the best deals, wait until tomorrow. The deals run 8 until 6 today and from 10 a.m. until 5 Sunday. And the westbound Beltline will be reduced to 2 lanes between Fish Hatchery Road and Seminole Highway during the daytime hours this weekend for construction on the bridge over Todd Drive. WISC-TV expects traffic delays because of this and is asking drivers to plan ahead, drive slower, and be alert for lane shifts. The Fish Hatchery Road ramp to the westbound Beltline will be closed until 6 a.m. Monday to accommodate this new bridge work. New this morning, 151 million Americans, including here in Wisconsin, are under excessive heat watches or warnings this weekend. That's almost half of the U.S. population. The heat we're feeling is part of a trend. Now, the Earth has been warming over the past 4 decades, and this July may be the hottest month ever recorded. The heat is blamed for at least 2 deaths this weekend. 21 children have died so far this year after being left in cars, a risk that rises with the mercury.
It's never safe to leave a child in a car, even for a few minutes. Little ones are going to heat up 3 to 5 times faster than an adult.
Chicago's Lurie Children's Hospital demonstrated how hot a car can get on days like today. The temperature rose from 96 degrees to 124 degrees in just a half hour. Meanwhile, the Madison Fire Department has some words of advice for anyone who uses a dehumidifier. Turn it off when you aren't home. The department says it has recently seen an increase in malfunctioning dehumidifiers, which is causing fires around the city. They say many malfunctions occur when the owners are not using the built-in water reservoir and instead discharge the water directly into a drain. This causes the unit to run more frequently, and therefore they are more prone to failure. The hot weather forced the cancellation of the Packers 1K Kids Run Friday afternoon. Organizers say the conditions were too dangerous for the event to proceed. Today's 5K run walk will continue as scheduled at 8 a.m. But if you know anyone participating, runners are asked to monitor the weather situation for themselves before starting the race. And the Brewers are on the road in a stifling game in Arizona where the game time temperature was 108 degrees, but that unfortunately didn't translate to the team's players and pitchers bringing the heat. The Crew went into the game aiming to win 2 in a row against the Diamondbacks, but after a 3-1 lead entering the bottom of the 3rd inning, the Brewers blew it, letting the Diamondbacks back in the game, giving up 5 runs on 7 hits in less than 3 innings. The Crew would try and rally, but it wasn't enough. Final score 10-7. The Wisconsin Football Coaches Association All-Star Game kicks off today in Oshkosh. There's an 8-player game, a small school game, and a large school game that'll fill the entire day at Titan Stadium at UW Oshkosh. It'll be North versus South. The South rosters practiced in the heat at Whitewater earlier this week. Coordinating a high school football all-star roster in 1 week is no joke, but the coaches tell us everyone's having a lot of fun.
It's difficult getting it going in your own town, but to have people coming from, potentially 46 different places and to do it all within a 6-day period, it's a challenge, but boy, it's pretty crazy how these guys can do it like that.
The coaches are doing a phenomenal job getting us on the same page, and I mean, the first couple of practices were a little brutal, but we're getting a lot better and we're starting to click.
The game kicks off at 10 o'clock this morning. Well, it is 5:11 and the hot streak continues, but a change is on the way. You're taking a live look over the Capitol where vendors are getting ready for hopefully a very busy day at the market. Chris has your full alert day forecast just ahead. Stay with us.
Well, another day of the heat continues across south central Wisconsin, but it is not just us. dealing with the heat out here, folks. We are talking on a national level. Extreme heat going on for millions of folks. Heat advisories begin all the way throughout parts of New Mexico and Texas, and then you work your way towards the eastern part of the country. You have heat advisories and excessive heat warnings from parts of Kansas through southern Wisconsin, through southern Michigan, all the way up into Maine. So there are a lot of folks getting in on the heat, and that does include us. Excessive heat warnings continue until 8 o'clock this afternoon, and then we will finally begin to see somewhat of a break in this pattern. But we're going to do what we did again yesterday, or we're going to do what we did yesterday all over again. Some of those peak heat indices yesterday made it all the way up to 113 in terms of the feels like temperature in some spots. Madison, it felt like 108 at the warmest part of the day. Actual air temperatures were into the low and mid 90s. Madison hit a high of 93. Boscobel hit a high of 96. La Crosse a high of 97. And we're already starting things off on a warm note. The temperature 80 degrees here at 5:14 in the morning. And we're going to continue to watch those temperatures rise from here. And with dew points well into the 70s and approaching 80 in some spots, we are going to watch the heat indices begin to tick up. Already feeling like 85 this morning. Watch what happens as we go throughout the day. Here we are at early after or late morning hours, and we'll see a lot of those temperatures approaching 100 by lunchtime, feeling like 108, feeling like 111 perhaps at some times this afternoon. But watch that relief that comes in from the north. That's a chance of some showers and thunderstorms coming our direction. They aren't showing up on high resolution Doppler here just yet, but we are watching them back to the west across parts of the Dakotas. Those will move our direction, and when they get here, we do have a slight risk of some strong to severe thunderstorms going on, with damaging winds and hail being the primary threats there. Notice those rounds of storms developing in the early afternoon hours, and they could come in multiple rounds through the evening before we finally begin to cool off as winds begin to turn out of the north. This big ridge of heat going to collapse a little bit as a trough of cooler air comes our direction, and that sends temperatures back to where they should be for this time of the year. So another couple of alert days, but then more sunshine through the middle of the week, with temperatures, although still above average, closer to where they should be this time of the year, and we will get rid of that rough humidity. Keely.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. And not very often that we see our part of the state in that really deep red.
I know, and that is a true thing, but I think we're finally going to get rid of that for the next couple of days.
All right, looking forward to it. Thank you, Chris.
My pleasure.
It's 5:17 right now. A former boy bander is reportedly in talks to play a Disney prince, and a successful Broadway show is getting ready to close. Plus, in this week's 3 Things to Watch, we're celebrating a 10-year anniversary, an entertaining superhero film, and a classic Disney film that is always good for a rewatch. A look at what's trending is just ahead on News 3 Now this morning, Saturday. Well, topping this morning's entertainment headlines, the curtain will fall on Waitress after 4 years on Broadway. The Tony-nominated hit with songs written by pop singer Sarah Bareilles tells the story of lovable diner employee Jenna. The fan favorite was Bareilles' Broadway debut, and it even stopped here in Madison for a week-long run last summer. The last Broadway show will be on January 5th. From the theater to theaters nationwide. It took 28 years, but she's back as Sarah Connor. In a conversation with Entertainment Weekly, Linda Hamilton says she ignored 3 phone calls from the director of the next installment of The Terminator before accepting the role. Now in her 60s, she says it took a year of training to get strong enough to play the iconic role. Terminator Dark Fate hits the theater September 1st. And Entertainment insiders say Harry Styles is in early talks to play Prince Eric in Disney's live-action remake of The Little Mermaid. Singer Halle Bailey is already cast to go under the sea as Ariel. There is no official word from Disney yet on whether Styles will go on and kiss the girl. Production on the new film is set to begin early next year. But you don't have to wait until then to watch something very good with the latest take on the Disney classic Lion King, now in theaters. The original film is one of Will Loper's picks in this weekend's 3 Things to Watch.
Say my name so my powers will become yours. Shazam.
Wait, for real?
Say it, okay?
New on home video this week is Shazam. The terrifically entertaining film follows a 14-year-old boy who gets superhero powers and must learn to use them and save the world.
That's crazy, right?
What are your superpowers?
Superpowers, dude? I don't even know how to pee in this thing.
This is proof of authenticity. Super strength. Electricity manipulation. Hyperspeed.
I'd like to purchase some of your finest beer, please.
Shazam is available to rent or buy everywhere now.
His name is Captain Sparkle Fingers.
No, it's not. That's not my name.
This week, Disney's remake of The Lion King releases in theaters. But something tells me it just won't compare to the 1994 version.
It means no worries for the rest of your days.
After witnessing his father's death, Simba runs away and befriends Timon and Pumbaa, but his past calls back to him.
Everything's destroyed. There's no food, no water. Simba, if you don't do something soon, everyone will starve.
I can't go back.
Why?
You wouldn't understand.
You must take your place in the circle of life.
How can I go back? I'm not who I used to be.
Remember who you are. You are my son and the one true king. Remember.
1994's version of The Lion King is available to rent or buy everywhere now.
I think we should stop seeing each other.
Just like that?
Just like that.
Start from the beginning and tell us what happened.
Finally, today marks the 10-year anniversary of 500 Days of Summer.
So you have a boyfriend?
No. Who needs it? We're young. Might as well have fun while we can.
Wait. What happens if you fall in love?
You don't believe that, do you?
Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel star in the romance that explores the course of a relationship.
Did you ever even have a boyfriend?
Of course.
What happened? Why didn't they work out?
What always happens? Life.
500 Days of Summer is available to rent or buy everywhere now.
But get over her. I don't want to get over her. I want to get her back.
Happy watching. Those are the 3 things you need to watch. And this is Will Loper for News 3 Now this morning.
Lots of good picks. There's much more ahead on News 3 now. Next, we're running through the morning's top stories, including the latest on the widespread power outages after 2 fires yesterday in Madison. What's next as MG&E works to rebuild and make sure something like this doesn't happen again. We'll be right back. Right now, an unlikely friendship. What's behind the unexpected bond between a former inmate and a police chief, and the life lessons they're teaching each other.
From the Channel3000.com Alert Center, this is News 3 Now this morning.
Good morning. It's July 20th. I'm Keely Arthur. It is about 5:30 this morning. We'll get a check of your first alert forecast with Chris in just a second. But first, here are 3 things you should know this morning. Power has now been restored for all Madison area MG&E customers after a fire caused widespread, long-lasting outages downtown yesterday. So what was to blame? MG&E says it was a mechanical problem and failures with equipment that sparked a pair of fires at 2 of their substations. Crews had both fires under control before noon, and thankfully no one was injured. The 2 substations are electrically connected, so ATC says it's likely that the fires were related. Governor Tony Evers declared a state of emergency overnight for both the city and the county. 151 million Americans, including here in Wisconsin, are under an excessive heat watch warning this weekend. That's almost half of the U.S. population. The heat we're feeling is part of a trend. The Earth has been warming over the past 4 decades, and this July may turn out to be the hottest month ever recorded. The heat is blamed for at least 2 deaths so far this weekend. The westbound Beltline will be reduced to 2 lanes between Fish Hatchery Road and Seminole Highway during the daytime hours this weekend for construction on the bridge over Todd Drive. Wisconsin DOT expects traffic delays because of this and is asking drivers to plan ahead, drive slower, and be alert for lane shifts. The Fish Hatchery Road ramp to the westbound Beltline will be closed until 6 a.m. Monday to accommodate the bridge work. And now here's meteorologist Chris Reese with your Saturday forecast. And Chris, expecting somewhat of a cool down at some point?
Eventually, but that's not coming today. Not at all. We have heat advisories and excessive heat warnings for a lot of folks. Check this out. We have heat advisories going all the way towards eastern New Mexico. Excessive heat warnings come into play once you get towards eastern Kansas through St. Louis. All of Illinois. It's hot. You're under an excessive heat warning. All of Indiana, all of Ohio, a large 2/3 chunk of Kentucky, southern Wisconsin, southern Michigan, all of those just excessive heat warnings. The I-95 corridor from about Myrtle Beach all the way up through Boston and into Maine, all under excessive heat warnings. So we are not the only ones at all, but we're starting out at a warm note already. 80 degrees, winds coming out of the south, 82 as you work your way over towards Boscobel. Prairie du Chien also at 82 degrees. We're at 80 in Madison, winds out of the south, and dew points well into the mid 70s. And when your dew points come in at 74, 77, 79, first of all, ew, just don't talk to me at that point. It's very uncomfortable. The air is tropical, and the problem with that is when you begin to sweat in the heat, it does not evaporate, and that is needed to actually cool you off. Instead, it sticks around, and you can overheat rather quickly. We're also watching the chance for strong to severe thunderstorms developing through the area this afternoon. They're not out there yet, but we're watching what's developing towards the west. Of course, we'll keep you guys up to date on that throughout the day. Keely?
All right, thank you so much, Chris. In our ongoing series, A More Perfect Union, we bring you stories that show us what unites us as Americans is far greater than what divides us. This morning, Adriana Diaz introduces us to a young Indianapolis man whose surprising decision led to a very unlikely friendship.
You look good. You all right, buddy? You all right?
An unexpected bond is building in Avon, Indiana.
You looking good.
Between 23-year-old Ramil Patamber, who's rebuilding his life after prison, and Brian Nugent, the deputy police chief here.
It's a lot I'm trying to learn and unlearn. I need a mentor who can get me to where I want to be, who can teach me what I need to know, and he answered all that.
Was the fact that he was a police officer a plus?
Yes. My goal was to not go back to prison. But I didn't 100% know what to do to not go back to prison. And I knew that he knew that.
Like, he's the expert in what to do not to go back to prison. 6.5 years ago, Ramil was a 17-year-old honor student struggling with the death of his father.
I was lost and had a lot to prove. I felt like to prove it, I had to be tough. I was a follower, and one poor decision led to the next.
He robbed a Little Caesars at gunpoint with the help of a friend who worked there.
911, where's your emergency? We just got robbed and held up with a gun.
Ramil was arrested and later convicted of felony armed robbery and criminal confinement. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison.
I didn't believe it. I just started crying immediately.
Why didn't you believe it?
Because my son robbing someone, that just wasn't his character.
Officer Nugent knows the story well because he was the officer who arrested Ramil.
You know, very few cases that you work do you forget, and Ramil was just very memorable.
During Ramil's time in prison, his mother, Daphne Harris, insisted on staying in touch with Officer Nugent.
I needed him to know that he wasn't just another kid in trouble, some little ghetto kid that you would think. You know, I needed him to know that he has a home, he has a family, he has a support system. This is who my son is.
And you didn't want him to think your son was a stereotype?
Exactly.
After he was released early for good behavior, Ramil wanted to get into home improvement and real estate, but felt he needed a mentor to help. Then one day, while working at Goodwill, a familiar face dropped off a donation.
So I just asked him, like, hey, are you Detective Brian? And I was just like, hey, it's me. How you doing?
I mean, you greeted him like a long-lost friend.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What did you think when he asked you to be a mentor?
So that's never happened to me. I said, look, you know, I'm happy to do it, but there's going to be some rules. You know, we talked about we're going to touch base every month. We're going to go out for lunch. We're going to have conversations. Accountability is such a huge part of that.
Who told you about those nachos?
Coming back out of prison and finding employment. We talked about that. How does he encounter the questions that he might get about his background? When do you volunteer some of that stuff? When do you hold back on some of that?
And what did he teach you about that?
The first thing that stuck in my mind was that if I view myself as less than Ramil, then I'm less than Ramil. I can't be mad at you to treat me how I treat myself. I'm not ex-convict, I'm not just black, I'm not just Pakistani, I'm Ramil.
What did you think about cops growing up? What were you taught?
Never to talk to them, never to trust them. They lie and they arrest you. That's what people told me, but after interacting with Brian, then that's not the case.
I hope that people can see with everything that's going on is all it takes is respect on both sides. It's more good kids out there than bad. It's more good police out there than bad.
Ramil now has a steady job doing heating and air.
I want something out of life. I want to be successful and I want to be truly free.
He's also renovating his own home and going to school.
I think the change that I see the most in him is his confidence. There's no better reward in this job than helping somebody succeed and achieve those goals in their lives.
You don't blame him? You weren't angry at him?
Never, never. He treated me with compassion and understanding. He never treated me less than, not once. To this day, he still builds my worth and self-esteem. With him in my corner, I can do anything.
Anything with an unlikely mentor by his side. Adriana Diaz, Avon, Indiana.
What a great story. From a classic Shakespearean play to an anniversary 40 years in the making. Your Weekend 608 is next on News 3 Now this morning. Welcome back. It's the weekend in the 608.
Here's a look at what's going on around Madison.
Opera in the Park now is in its 18th year, and it returns to Garner Park tonight. And that event put on by the Madison Opera is one to commit to early in the day. Folks are welcome and encouraged to stake out a spot by laying down a blanket this morning so they can return for the 8 p.m. concert with a picnic basket. The Madison Opera is set to perform everything from the familiar La Traviata to Funny Girl.
A unique production of William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet will be staged this weekend at Lake Kaganza State Park near Stoughton. Summit Players Theater in its fifth year performing Shakespeare in Wisconsin state parks for audiences of all ages. 6 actors from the troupe will perform a free 75-minute version of Romeo and Juliet. But before that, they will give a 45-minute educational workshop in which they will discuss with the audience the many ways that Shakespeare wrote about the natural world and how it's best to see his plays performed outdoors.
And speaking of Shakespeare outdoors, American Players Theater is celebrating its 40th anniversary. The event will feature live music by company actors and guests, a silent auction of the APT artifacts and artwork, and maybe best of all, Speak the Speech, 40 years worth of favorite scenes and monologues read by members of the APT Corps. But audience members are encouraged to participate too by signing up in advance to read or act out in 5 minutes or less scenes from APT productions past. That should be pretty fun.
And an annual tradition, more than 40 years strong, returns to downtown Madison this morning. Maxwell Street Days draw an average of 30,000 people to State Street. It's 3 days of music, good food, and great bargains, all displayed on outdoor stands. This year, more than 50 shops, restaurants, and museums are participating. The event is modeled after Chicago's famous Maxwell Street Outdoor Market, which ran for more than 100 years until 1994.
And the Dane County Fair continues all weekend long. You can save money by buying fair and carnival tickets in advance. This year, security is top of mind for many. The fair partners with the Dane County Sheriff's Office and Madison Police to have plenty of officers on the ground all weekend long.
And this last one's outside of the 608, but down in Florida. How about 135 bearded men who look an awful lot like Ernest Hemingway, and they have coverage on Key West, the author's home during the 1930s, to compete in the annual Hemingway Look-alike contest. One of those bearded men is one of News 3 Now's very own in the green turtleneck, Garrett Marshall. He's an engineer at the station. The 3-night competition takes place at Sloppy Joe's Bar, where Hemingway often shared cocktails and camaraderie with friends.
I feel like this is Garrett's year. Okay. And you can always get this month's Madison magazine for all of the best Madison area has to offer. Well, still ahead, the hot streak continues with another dangerous forecast ahead, but things are about to change.
That's right. You're looking live over the Capitol right now. I'll have your full forecast next on News 3 Now this morning.
But first, let's look at who's 3 today. Happy birthday, Maggie.
Some big time heat was around here yesterday. Heat indices in some spots made it not only well above 100 degrees, but some folks above 110 for the heat indices. Partyville, 113, Reedsburg, 112, 111, and Dodgeville and Middleton, it felt as warm as 110. Madison, it felt as warm as 108. So we certainly saw the heat yesterday, and we're not the only ones dealing with it. Heat advisories and excessive heat warnings are in play for a large part of the country. We're talking Maine all the way down towards parts of New Mexico. Of course, southern Wisconsin is included in that as well. We do have excessive heat warnings. These are going to go until 8 o'clock tonight. As you work your way towards northern Illinois, those excessive heat warnings continue until 7 o'clock tonight. We're starting out on a warm note. 80 degrees already this morning. Mineral Point at 81, Boscobel at 82. Outside of that, a lot of these temperatures are well into the mid 70s and upper 70s. Then comes the dew point. A lot of these dew points are well into the 70s. 74 is our dew point in Madison. Mineral Point has a dew point of 81 right now. This is problematic because in addition to it being hot, your body can't sweat. The sweat can't evaporate, so that leads to you feeling hotter. Your body never cools off. So the heat index already into the mid 80s, upper 80s, and low 90s in some spots across Wisconsin. That gets worse as we go throughout the day. 9:30, likely feeling like 100 degrees towards noon, feeling close to 110, and then perhaps feeling as warm as 111 to 113 for some places towards the south going through today. But check out what's happening towards the north. This is a line of showers and thunderstorms that'll come through and eventually bring us some relief. We're going to wait for that to get here. No big time showers or thunderstorms out there at the moment. Things are actually relatively quiet. But as we look back towards the north and west, showers and storms are already starting to gather steam over parts of southern Minnesota. This is what we're going to be tracking our direction later on this afternoon. And there is a chance for some of these to be on the severe side. We have a slight risk of severe weather out there right now. Let's time it out for you. 2 o'clock, showers and thunderstorms likely developing towards the north. This will race through during the afternoon in waves, and then eventually this begins to cool us off. This big ridge of heat will give way to a trough of cooler air working its way into the eastern half of the country. That's when we'll see those temperatures begin to cool down, still above average, but cooler than where we've been and closer to where we should be for this time of the year.
The middle half of the next week looks pretty good. It
does look pretty good. Have you had your heat and humidity fix?
I love it. So honestly, no. I know, when the winter comes, I'm going to be outside reporting in the snow. So
That's
I'll
okay.
take the heat.
That's okay. Enjoy it while it's here, because we all know in Wisconsin, winter will be here before we know it.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
My pleasure.
Well, we've been asking you to share your morning with us, and here is a beautiful photo submitted by Pat over in rural Orfordville. Thank you so much for sending that beautiful sunrise. And what does your morning look like? Take a picture and post it to the Channel 3000 Facebook page or on Twitter using the hashtag MyNews3 We'll share our favorites right here on our show. And stick with News 3 all day long, and then tomorrow morning on News 3 Now, we're heading to the moon, or at least to NASA, where astronauts once again have their sights set on heading to the moon. What's next for that agency 5 decades after the first moon landing? But first, back on Earth, carrying the future, would you ride in a driverless taxi that also flies? How soon these futuristic technologies could become reality? We're right back.
It's the super
Finally this morning, testing is underway for what could become the world's first air taxi without a pilot.
Yeah, Chris Van Cleve got a sneak peek on what could be the future of ride sharing.
And test all. Vahana 1 initiating takeoff on my mark. 3, 2, 1.
In Sanskrit, Vahana means that which carries, that which pulls. In Oregon, Vahana's 8 electric motors hope to carry the future. There's no human at the controls of this prototype single-seat autonomous air taxi as it takes off vertically like a helicopter. Its wings then rotate, allowing it to fly like a plane. The battery-powered aircraft hits speeds over 100 miles an hour and can fly up to 35 miles. Hervé Hilaire is the project manager for Vahana.
Do you think you're going to get people who want to get in a flying contraption that doesn't have a pilot?
Over time, people will get used to it.
Buzzing over rural Oregon, this could be the answer to urban gridlock, simply flying over the traffic jam. But convincing the public might be a challenge. Even among those 18 to 24, only about 1 in 5 say they'd fly in something without a pilot.
How do you convince people to change their mind? I mean, at some point, you need some first adopters to go, all right, I'm getting in it.
You want to demonstrate perfect safety and, real added value for the customer. And, this is really about saving time in a convenient and safe way.
Plane maker Airbus's Silicon Valley incubator, A-Cubed, took Vahana from a sketch to flight testing in less than 2 years, using materials already commercially available.
We've been working on showing that we can execute a safe test flight from takeoff through transition to over 100 miles an hour and return safely to the ground.
Right now, the test flights aren't very long. They only last a few minutes at a time. One of the challenges will be developing better, lighter batteries that let these things fly farther and longer. At this month's Uber Elevate conference, nearly a dozen flying car concepts were on display, including helicopter maker Bell's full-size but non-flying Nexus demonstrator. It seats 4 passengers and aims to enter customer service by the mid-2020s, flying at 150 miles an hour for up to 150 miles. For a time, it will have a human operator on board before going fully autonomous.
Well, we're not ready today.
Acting FAA Administrator Dan Elwell says it's too early to talk about timelines.
We're all about gathering data to assure us of the safety for these vehicles. And unmanned is a much, much higher bar than a piloted vehicle for sure, and we have a ways to go.
Regulations and a system to manage increasingly crowded airspace still needs to be developed. For Airbus, Vahana is a bit like a first draft. It'll be up to future models to prove they can safely fly passengers. It will be years before people are flying in an autonomous air taxi, but already a company in London is buying up rooftop space for landing pads, so they'll be ready when the technology is set to take off. For CBS This Morning, Chris Van Cleve, Pendleton, Oregon.
All right, well, back on land, things very, very warm still today. For
yes, they are. I was just about to ask you, would you do that?
I don't know. I would maybe let some other people be the guinea pigs and then go eventually.
Same here, but of course it's very hot out there. We'll focus on that for now. I will stick to piloted airplanes in the meantime. We'll have a chance for some showers and thunderstorms this afternoon, but before that gets here, folks, it's going to be very hot with heat indices well over 100, but then the cool down comes in the week ahead with temperatures closer to where you should be. If you're headed outdoors, grab your hats, just like Hemi and Hollandale, and know that temperatures will be around 88.
Hemi and Hallandale looking very cool.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, stay cool, and we'll see you at 8 o'clock for a whole extra hour of News 3 Now.